Green Bay Packers, their offseason, probably the quietest of any team in this division. Key additions. You brought in guard Aaron Banks. You brought in cornerback Nate Hobbs. Key losses. You lost your center Josh Myers. You lost Eric Stokes, but he was not really relied upon last year. The draft was kind of I don't want to say backups draft, but if we're sitting here 6 months from now, Matthew Golden's really the only one who I'd expect to play a role on this team out the gate. And now it's not to say Baron Sorrell can't, or Savion Williams can't, or Anthony Belton can't. It's just like, I think those guys are all backups at this point in time. So it really wasn't an offseason of massive turmoil, but they won 11 games last year. And obviously they have a lot of young guys that they're relying upon, whether it's in the receiving core, whether it's to rush the passer for them on the defensive line. So to me, all around, just kind of a status quo offseason. I went B- for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, this is one of those grades where it's nothing to write home about. You're not necessarily the valedictorian of this offseason, and you're not necessarily making a C in our class, but we're not going to write home about it because I'll give them a B-. And to your point, a lot of these guys are going to be utilized in the depth role, but I think that giving Jordan Love that extra juice on the offensive side of the ball with Matthew Golden, it scares me a little bit. And with all the stuff they do with their receivers and the number of guys who are vying for footballs in Green Bay, it's going to be interesting to see how Matthew Golden pans out there and how they utilize him. As far as Anthony Belton goes, it's always good to have big guys that play the tackle position. And we've got positional versatility on the Green Bay offensive line as it pertains to the inside of the offensive line. Let's get some more guys at tackle. I like this. I'll give them a B-.
Yeah, I think for the Packers, their sort of ascendance, if they are going to be North champs, it's just going to come from Jordan Love and the receiving core, truthfully. That's what it's going to be. They have to be better than they were a year ago. And obviously, he was banged up a ton, but those guys were not good enough. And that's why, push come to shove, Vikings got him twice, Lions got him twice. That was ultimately what cost the Packers North. So,
and the Bears
status quo offseason that
twice,
I think still puts them 9.5 wins is their over-under. That's where I see them as probably about a 10-win team this year. I don't think they made the leap to get any better than that, but they might have a few bounces go their way one way or the other and still get to 10.
I've got Green Bay and Chicago both getting 10 wins, Detroit and Minnesota both getting 9 wins.
Ooh. Speaking of, let's get to the Minnesota Vikings, where a lot of offseason turmoil. Obviously lost their quarterback in Sam Darnold, lost one of their starting safeties in Cam Bynum, one of their versatile guys in that secondary. Retained Byron Murphy, retained Aaron Jones. Those were key pieces for them. Biggest additions, they really revamped their offensive line, stole 2 guys from the Indianapolis Colts and Ryan Kelly at center, Will Fries at right guard, revamped their D-tackle position with Javon Hargrave, who obviously missed a good portion of last year from the San Francisco 49ers, Jonathan Allen, who also missed a good portion of last year from the Commanders, add Jordan Mason to be a capable backup for Aaron Jones. And then in the draft, found their starting left guard in Donovan Jackson. I assume that's where he's going to end up. So kind of really did a good job of filling a lot of the holes. The one hole, though, that I know we just saw a domino fall in terms of a trade piece in George Pickens. But, man, I would be surprised if the Minnesota Vikings do not add a cornerback to this group before it's all said and done, because it's Byron Murphy, Mekhi Blackman, and Isaiah Rodgers right now are your starting cornerbacks for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know. I am worried about that. That is the weak link on this roster. So while I thought they did a great job overall, I still got to go A- because a lot of positions, O-line, D-line, awesome job of revamping it. I thought they did a lot of budget contracts. I love their approach. They found kind of this, I don't want to say market efficiency, but their strategy was obviously target guys who were injured, who were getting smaller deals, smaller guaranteed money deals than other teams would give because they aren't fully healthy. But I still do worry about what they're going to do at the cornerback position. So that's why I went A-.
So what do we know about the Minnesota Vikings? They're going into the season with what is in essence a rookie quarterback, okay, coming off of an injury. How do you help bolster his situation and make it better and clear the clouds from this guy? You add some some linemen. Well, they did that. You talked about their additions on the offensive line, obviously in the draft with Donovan Jackson. Defensive front got a little bit better there. We've loved watching Jonathan Allen play for a long time. When Javon Hargrave is right, he's as tough to block as anybody on the inside. So you've got two man-eaters on the inside there. I really like that. The only reason I'm not going to give them an A- and I'm going to give them a B+ is because they didn't retain Sam Darnold. They didn't find a way to get that done. And
Really?
as much as people love JJ McCarthy, I really loved what I saw from Sam Darnold last year, and not much changes. If you're Sam Darnold in the huddle this year and you look around with the new pieces they've added with the receivers out there on the edge, you're in a good spot. And Kevin O'Connell knows what he's working with. He'd be able to make it better. But now it's J.J. McCarthy's show, and they ship Sam Darnold out west. You better bolster that line. I give them credit for doing so. As it pertains to the corners, that's scary because you look around the division, there's a bunch of guys who can sling the football around and a bunch of pass catchers. You can't leave a team without corners. That's an old Al Davis adage. So in that, as it pertains to that, I'll give them a B+, not an A-.
See, I had the exact opposite take on the Darnold McCarthy situation. That was a good decision in my eyes. Not to say that McCarthy is 100% going to be as good or better than Sam Darnold was. It's that you knew where you stood with Sam Darnold and paying him what the Seahawks paid him. The difference between Sam Darnold's contract, if you gave Sam Darnold what he got from Seahawks, is basically says you can't get Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. Would you rather have Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, and then whatever J.J. McCarthy could be, or Sam Darnold? I'm going to go with the former, two other position players, and then shoot for the moon, right? You can go, double-digit wins again with Sam Darnold, and then be holding, yourself crying at the end of January because he's just not good enough to get you through the gauntlet that is the NFC at this point in time. He's just not.
We don't know what J.J. McCarthy is.
That's true. We don't.
And I understand having a quarterback on a rookie deal versus having a guy that's, inflatedly overpaid because that's just the market. I completely understand where you're coming from. We saw what the best version of a rookie quarterback looked like last year with Jaden Daniels. Lightning doesn't strike twice or whatever the hell they say. I just don't see J.J. McCarthy experiencing that kind of success. And if you were to retain Sam Darnold, how many of these pieces would you have been able to afford? And did you need to get that much better?
I thought you did. I thought where they got, and obviously 14 wins, that in and of itself, incredible accomplishment. They did not feel like a Super Bowl team though. Like when you stack them up next to the Lions, when you stack them up next to the Eagles, they just didn't feel like it, unfortunately. So that's why I think they wanted, and this was kind of their plan all along when they drafted them, they just needed to get over the hump. And I think this at least gives them a shot of it. Now, will it? TBD, but they're at least putting themselves out there to do so. All right, last one, Detroit Lions, before we get to the South. A lot of turnover, most notably, though, at the coordinator position. I think the biggest ones come at the coordinator position. Losing OC Ben Johnson, losing DC Aaron Glenn. Big losses, though, to this roster. Carlton Davis at corner, Kevin Zeitler at guard. Those ones will be difficult to replace, I'll say. But now DJ Reed came over. Not sure. I think that's probably a wash or maybe even an upgrade with DJ Reed in there. So with all they bring back defensively, the real big additions to this team come with just guys who didn't play last year, whether it's Aleem McNeil coming back from his ACL, whether it's Aiden Hutchinson coming back from his broken leg. Those will all be massive. The draft I didn't love as much, but it's just hard for me to really go to bat for this offseason given the coordinators. I went C+ because – and it was always going to happen, right? That's the problem with your quote unquote GM or managing head coaches who don't have a hand in scheme, is that when you do truly get a guy who is special in regards to what he can do schematically, they get poached, they leave. And his understudy Tanner Engstrand left too. And so you were left bringing in someone from the Broncos, I'm blanking on his name, John Morton from the Broncos, to come over, and you don't know what he's going to be like, right? Comparatively to Ben Johnson. You're hoping, but you really don't know. And so I just think that given all that, I went C+ for this Detroit Lions offseason because it's just too many hits and too much turnover at the coordinator position to take all at once.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a C. And I want to talk about Aiden Hutchinson for a second because I was watching his progress video, and I know that there's a lot of people who watch that video and immediately say he's cooked or the leg will never be the same. And take it from someone who's had pretty much every injury you can have and had to rehab from everything. The only thing that heals you is time. You can't replace talent, and size can't be coached. And love of the game is something that isn't added over time. Aiden Hutchinson checks all those boxes, and he still is a dangerous rusher. And I'm hoping and praying that he can get back to where he was. I know how hard of a road it's going to be, but if you're a football fan, you should be rooting and cheering for good football. That being said, you should be rooting and cheering for a guy like Aiden Hutchinson to come back from this injury with a vengeance. When I think about the Lions and I think about the taste that's left in our mouths from this past season, it is one of disgust, plagued with injury, and having to learn a lot of new names every week because there's so many guys out there that had never played that were playing defense. Yes, they have a lot of people out the door, both offensively and defensively on the staff, but they're getting a lot of their studs back. I mean, they're getting a lot of their guys back. And you look at the list of retained players, it's a good list. And obviously not the sexiest of drafts, but there's going to be a lot of players in there who will be a part of this unit.
When you got a new OC, how long did it take before it felt like everyone was seemingly on the same page? Like, what's the turnover time compared to, when you obviously have an entrenched OC that's been there a few years and you come into a season versus learning a brand new scheme for a season?
Well, when I was a rookie, Mark Trestman drafted me. He was the head coach. He was also the offensive coordinator. It was his first year with the team. So I got to watch even veterans, 12-year guys learn and have to really focus even more so in meetings because it was something new. I would say that at the end of probably by the end of training camp, you feel as good as you're going to feel. But your understanding of why we're doing certain things, like when Matt Nagy came in 2018, it was at the end of that spring session. You get to go to OTAs, minicamp, all that stuff. We're working out together. We're doing drills on cones and no helmets, shorts. It's an environment that really breeds learning because you're not just beating the hell out of each other. And I think it all depends on the coach, but you should understand your scheme by the end of the spring. And when you show up for training camp, you should be ready to roll. And the foundation is poured in the spring and you add things on in the fall. It doesn't take too long because all football is pretty much the same. The details are different, but what we're doing, it's not rocket science.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. For the Detroit Lions, and it might not, and it's not even just that. Like, it's not that like they have to learn a new scheme or whatever. It's just that Ben Johnson would go into like a lab and create the game plan himself. Like notoriously was that kind of guy who was in control of everything, was not delegating any of it. That's why, his loss and the Bears' gain is, in my opinion, so dramatic. So we'll see. We shall see with the Detroit Lions.